Hey, how we doing today? Thank you for joining us in your successful retirement. I want to talk about an issue that keeps cropping up today. Um, Dealing with voluntary retirement offers is should you take it? And it's a big question for a lot of people. We're going into a situation where the last 2 years worth of employment has been weak at best. Maybe we're going into a recession. My company is offering this cash buyout to get out. Do I get out? And that's a tough question to answer, but I want to kind of go over some of that today and kind of help you parse through that because it's important. Um, if I look around, like for things I'm dealing with, within my business, I look at like Verizon. Verizon last year, new CEO, he gets in there about 8 seconds later, they lay off 13,000 or about 13% of the company, and they were riffed. There was no VSP, voluntary, severance package. There was nothing. It was here's your whatever number of weeks, get out. You're out by X date, and that's it. And that was a big shock to a lot of people. They went on leadership in Verizon went on to say that look, revenue's down, costs are up. In order for it to be profitable, we need to get revenue up and costs down. And the easiest way to get rid of cost is to get rid of employees. AT&T's been doing the same thing. AT&T is a bigger company in terms of by number of employees. I think they've got about 145,000 employees now, but they have cleared the decks of 100,000 employees in the last 5 years. And I remember 2 or 3, maybe 4 years ago, they said at that time they wanted to cut staffing by 50%. They're close to doing close to that since 2020, but it was after 2020 they said that I'd have to look up when they actually uh, when they made that announcement of how many employees they had, but they're still going strong. I know that uh, another thing I'm bumping into is I have a lot of a lot of contacts with the non-management union members with Verizon throughout Southern New England and New York. Big contracts coming up this August. Big contracts coming up, and it's a question of is the company going to finally play hardball? They've yet to really play hardball. Union members might think so, but if you look at Verizon versus or even AT&T versus a lot of other companies that deal with unions, is they've been very generous in the past in terms of negotiating, not forcing the union into taking certain things. And the big issues with the union, it's always been we don't want contract workers. We don't want to pay a whole lot for health insurance. We want decent raises. And I know that a couple of years ago, and this was 3-4 years ago, what's now Consolidated Communication. I think it was Fairpoint at the time. I think it might have been Fairpoint at the time. The northern states, so Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, their unions negotiated with the company and they got okay numbers back. And again, this is 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago. They got anemic salary increases, which haven't paced inflation, but they thought they were happy with it. But the company got a toehold in terms of, look, we want to bring in more non-union workers. We want to contract out for certain things. And it was one of those deals where I think the union kind of felt that we don't have a choice. And I think the same thing may happen with Verizon this year, is that may be the beginning of, look, we don't need you. This isn't 1965 anymore. I don't need this. There are plenty of specialized people out there that don't work for Verizon that can do the jobs that you're doing. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And I think that there's a big fear out there that there might be a big reduction coming on the union side. Because of that, there's rumors that sometime in April, who knows? It's a rumor, which means there's no fact. It's always prefaced with a buddy of mine was talking to the business agent, or I talked to the business agent or a buddy was talking to a guy that was talking to the business agent. The business agent doesn't know. They don't know anything about what the company is going to offer. The company's not going to say anything until they make that offer. That's been their MO since Alexander Graham Bell ran the company, is we don't talk about the layoffs until we're going to get there. And usually they will offer some sort of voluntary package before they get to union negotiation time, just to kind of reduce the roles. So it's possible that something will happen. Whether it'll be April or not, we don't know. So we have all these things going on, and that's just within my little sphere, but that's happening across the country, across big corporations. And it's kind of, what do you do? And there's two ways to look at it. There's involuntary and voluntary. So involuntary, you don't have a choice. You like the Verizon workers back last fall, you get riffed. You're out Friday, and that's it. The best thing you can do is you can get ready now. Is if there is a target on some people's back. It's a question of, when do we see the next recession? It is coming, and it's sooner than later. Of course, I've been saying that for about 11 years. But the next recession, we lose it, where we lose a lot of jobs and have to rebuild from scratch, is coming. And your job may be at risk depending on what you're doing and what that job might look like in 5 years, if it even exists in 5 years, as technology changes. If you have an involuntary offer, the best thing you can do today is just get ready for it. And I did a whole podcast back in I think November or December, and you can go look that up. And we go through all of it, is, going through the issues of COBRA and Social Security and your 401k, and how your severance is paid and how to handle retirement and all of that. Definitely jump back after you listen to this podcast and listen to that one. It'll give you kind of a checklist of what you need to be looking at. But really, it's time to kind of circle the wagons, jump on LinkedIn, get ready, start looking at what your prospects are, and go out and find another job, or possibly retire, depending on how many years you have at the company. There isn't much more you can do, but be prepared ahead of time is vitally important. Whether it's voluntary or involuntary, you want to be ready early. You probably want to get some sort of professional help. If you get that riff, that involuntary, it's probably a good idea to maybe have somebody look over things for you, to make sure you're making the right decisions. Again, it can be a stressful time, but let's talk about voluntary, because that's really what I want to talk about today. Is whether it's a VSP or an enhanced IP package or ISP package, and this thing crosses your desk, and you go, "Ooh, do I take this or not?" It's not an easy decision. I will tell you, I was talking with a colleague who is in HR at a much smaller company, and he was talking about a layoff. Is, you were listening to one of my podcasts, possibly on the layoff things, and he shoots me this text. He says, "Hey, I thought you recommended people didn't take a layoff, take a retirement offer, or a severance offer." And I said, "That's it. It's an individual decision. What's going on?" And he had just gone through a layoff at his company, and so I called him and I said, "Look, I got to pick your brain. Tell me what's going on, what you're thinking." And he said something fascinating, that the company spends an inordinate amount of time, more so than you would think as an employee, as a worker, trying to craft an offer to get rid of exactly how many people they want to get rid of. If it's a voluntary offer, they have a very specific target in mind, and they want those people out, and they will craft that offer to get those people out. And if they don't get it, they will do a layoff. But voluntary offers are very carefully put together so that they get the numbers they're looking for. The last time I know that Verizon screwed up one of those was 03, 04, somewhere in that range. I forget exactly when it was. They lost like 40,000, 50,000 employees in one day, because they made the offer too rich and they threatened too much. And a whole bunch of managers in the old telco, it was less a offer within wireless and more the old telco side. And like 40,000 people took the offer, and the company was like in disarray for 6 months or a year, because they lost so much capital within the company in terms of intellectual property. So they're very, very careful. And I found that to be fascinating. He said, if you get an offer that looks attractive, they're looking for you to leave for one reason or the other. And that just really blew me away. I didn't realize how much focus was on that. Is the company needs to get to a certain level. They want to get rid of, their goal is, it's kind of like that adverse selection thing. And I'll explain adverse selection in a second with a different example, but they want to get rid of certain employees. And in a big company, it's hard to find those employees you want to get rid of. You'd have to rely on your lower level managers to kind of figure that out. And that's not always the best way. They kind of craft this offer. Their goal is we want to keep the good people that are very productive. And we want to get rid of the people that are kind of dead weight to us, that either their job title or their job performance is not up to snuff, and let them move on somewhere else. Maybe they'll be more profitable over there, or maybe they'll drag that other company down. We don't care. We want to get rid of them. But it's an adverse selection type of thing. Because just like in insurance is where adverse selection is the most prevalent. If you take life insurance and you take a group of 100 people of the same age and you say, would you like to buy life insurance? The most healthiest people in that group of 100 are the least likely to buy the life insurance. And the least healthy people in that group of 100 are the most likely. As the company, well, you want the healthy people to buy it, and you don't want to sell it to the unhealthy people. So there's this back and forth that goes on, and the thing you're trying to do actually attracts the people you don't want, and vice versa. And the same thing goes for these offers: is are you keeping the most qualified people, or are you keeping the people that are most desperate? And I think they end up with the most desperate. Is I have to keep this job. You don't understand. I have to keep this job. I don't have a choice. I need this. While those are loyal employees, they may not be the best employees. You're kind of dealing with that issue. So it's a question of, when you're looking at this offer, when you receive this, what bucket do I fall in? Am I the person that can walk away, and is there value in that? Or do I have to try to hunker down and stick it out? It's really difficult. You look at, like, and I'll give you a great example within this, is within the trades. So electrical, plumbing, welding, things like that. All of these things, if you listen to like Mike Rowe, I love Mike Rowe. I love to listen to Mike Rowe. If you listen to Mike Rowe, he talks about this incessantly, as the trades, the average age in the trades are in their 50s to even early 60s, average age of these employees. Why? Years ago, decades ago, they let people go. And instead of letting go the oldest employees and giving them an incentive, they just started cutting in those industries. Simultaneously, there was this culture in the United States at that time, so say in the 80s, that, oh, only morons are plumbers and electricians. A lot of morons that have nice boats and nice second homes and things like that, because it's a very profitable place to be. It's a very stable place to be. And here we stand 40 years later, and there is a deficit of these people in the trades, especially at younger ages, because they made this bad choice. They thought they were getting rid of one group of people, and they got rid of the wrong group of people, and didn't kind of cultivate a culture where you were developing new people. Now we have this massive shortage. So if you're younger, plumbing, electrical, welding, things like that, HVAC, there is still a ton of demand out there. You're going to have to put your time in, just like everything else. But it is potentially someplace where it's profitable. So that's where the companies are coming from. That's what they're trying to do. And they don't know what they're going to get. What are we going to do? And I had a couple of interesting conversations with some clients and other people over the last month or three that I kind of wanted to share, and then we'll get into some of the things you should be thinking about specifically for yourself. One gentleman, different company, not a telco, completely different company, and he's getting laid off. And he doesn't have a choice. And they're giving him 25 weeks, which for this company was ridiculously generous, and he knows it is. He's being kept on for a couple of months because of his specific job title. But he said something to me that really stopped me. And it was a situation where he was involved in a merger. And that happens a lot, is in mergers, you have a lot of staff positions, accounting, management, HR, things of that wind up being a lot of overlap. And he knew he was part of the overlap, that at some point his job was going to be on the block. And he said, what I do, while my job title is very generic, he said, what I do is very specific. He said, I could have fought really hard. He said, and stayed on for a year or two or three. He said, because I'm going to leave and I'm taking intellectual property with me and they're going to be in trouble because of it. He said, but while he goes, I know I'll be able to find another job doing what I do. He said, I'm not terribly worried about that. He said, my fear is I don't take this offer and 6 months from now, they let me go. They just let me go and they get like 4 weeks and they collect unemployment and that's it. He said, I'm getting 25 weeks and a half year's pay to leave. And I decided to take that it was generous enough that it's my time and I'll take that 25 weeks of pay to be able to go find the next job, which I'm confident I will find. I'm not that worried about it and I'll work things out. And that was a very smart way to look at it. I thought that was very unique. It's an issue of if you don't take this, you could get riffed. Now, there was a VSP at Verizon last year or 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago now. It was the summer of 2024. Most of the people left the end of 2024. And then a little more than a year later, they had a riff. I don't know how many people they were trying to get on that VSP. I suspect some of them that didn't take it got riffed afterwards and kind of wish they took it. So you've got to kind of weigh that of where is it going. It's using Verizon as a specific example. That VSP is worth about 40% more. It's gigantic versus a RIF. You can control when you leave. There are a lot of benefits to taking that. There's a health insurance benefit. All of these have to be factored in to really what you're trying to do is what are my prospects? And that's, I think, really what you have to look at is where is my job title going to be in 5 years and what should I be doing? And if that job title is very different or doesn't exist, or you see a competitor coming up and your company may be much smaller in 5 years, it may be time to look around. And especially if you work for a big corporation, there are some advantages to you. So, the first thing you do is kind of assess where your retirement looks like, regardless of your age. Many people, I'll say this, the largest 401k provider in this country is Fidelity. I will tell you, it's garbage in, garbage out. So take this with a grain of salt. If you screw up the inputs, the outputs will be crappy. But Fidelity's retirement planning calculator, they're like in depth. They ask you all these questions and things. Isn't bad. It's actually pretty good. If I was controlling the inputs, I would trust their outputs implicitly. That's just from my experience of dealing with them. So you can use that to kind of assess where you are, depending on how old you are. Am I on track for retirement or not? Is probably very important before you take one of these offers. Is that may determine, do I try to be the hunker down person and stick with more years? Because leaving a company, changing companies, the person that stays 30 years at one company will more than likely have more money than the person that works 5 years at 6 companies. They just will. 401k, blackout periods and things of that nature, is the person that stays longer will have more resources available for that, even if they get paid slightly less at the end of their career because they weren't career hopping. So you need to be aware of that. You need to look at your future roadblocks. College education. Maybe you had a plan for a second home or a boat or whatever, some sort of large purchase later. As you're older and it's there, but college education is a big one. A vehicle that may be coming up, major home repair or expansion. Boy, I need a new roof next year, or the boiler's starting to sound funny. You want to factor all of those in because that's going to influence if you take a VSP or some sort of voluntary offer. What am I going to use that money for? I have seen some clients that have utilized that money for other things because they were able to parlay into another job at another firm very quickly. And they used that resource to wipe out debt or to purchase that thing. I have one client that took the VSP last year that's considering a second home possibly because he's never spent the money because he wound up transitioning really well. You need to be aware of that. Third thing is, and I'm shocked that more people don't look at this is retraining on the company dime. I don't get why people don't do more of this. That if you see possibility of something coming down the pike, that you don't take advantage of your employer will pay for college courses and things of that nature. I would abuse that system as best as possible. I have two interesting stories on that. First one is I had an acquaintance. He's got to be 20 years younger than me. He's in his early to mid 30s now, and he was part of this cohort of guys that I knew when they were in high school. That I was younger, I connected with them, and all his buddies. There was like 5 of them together. The other 4 went off to college. He became a Marine. So this is going to be 15, 18 years ago. Not a good, if you're kind of afraid of war, um, not a good time to be a Marine because the Marines go in first no matter what. We were in Afghanistan, we were in Iraq. Dave managed to go 4 years. He was never in a war zone ever. And it wasn't on purpose. It wasn't a situation where he was just trying to avoid it. He looked at his 4 years in the Marines as I can build as many skills as I can before I leave so that I walk out of here with as many skills as I can. They're going to pay me a salary and teach me something. So he went from program to program to program. Before they could get him ready for a deployment, he was off on another 6 to 12 months worth of training at something else. And he walked out of there, the only person who've ever seen do this in the Marines, he walked out of there with a boatload of skills that he was able to parlay into getting a job after his military career. And good for him. And that's a big deal. And you need to be thinking that way. Second story, it's my dad. I love my dad. My dad was an okay manager. My dad is a great, great human being. So I worked for my dad for a little bit when I was in college. And at the time, he ran the computer department of a mid-sized trust company. And this is going back in the 80s when each bank wrote their own software. That just seems so surreal to us now. What do you mean they write their own software? They wrote their own software for their banking system. So their trust system that kept track of all the assets and everything else and the trades and everything else was handwritten by employees of the firm. Just like in the late 90s, every retailer built their own merchant site. We don't do that anymore. We hire Shopify or whatever to take care of that for us, and they run all the back office. Well, at some point in the early to mid 90s, maybe it was late 90s. Now that I think about it. It was right around whenever the Ryder Cup was in Boston last. They decided they were going to go. He was comptroller of the bank at that point, and they decided they were going to go with an outside vendor to manage their trust system, which everybody does now. Nobody manages their own trust systems. They had an entire computer department. They had 4 programmers, 2 or 3 operators, a couple of systems guys. They probably had 8, 9, 10 people. It was not a big company, maybe 150, 200 employees. And my dad, to his credit, and to the company's credit, the company was really caring as well. They sent every single person to other training within the computer fields at that time to get them a better job someplace else. They made sure that those people walked out the door with a generous severance offer, but with education as well, so that they could step into something else, because they knew that what they were doing at the bank was gone and dead. Those jobs disappeared. They vaporized. And they said, here is this new skill that you can have. And it's an uplifting story. Now, if you work for a big corporation with 50 or 100,000 employees, they're not going to do that for you. They're not going to call you up and say, hey, Joe, you should look at taking XYZ course. That's your job. That's too big. There's too many people. There's nobody watching out for you. This is your time to start thinking about, is there something adjacent to what I'm doing now that will be here in 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years that I want to see what skills qualifications I can get through different training, or even going back to college for right now, and have my employer pay for it to get that skill. If they're offering it as a benefit, take advantage of that benefit. Which leads me into, now you've got to look at, what are your prospects outside of your corporation now, outside of your job right now? Is AI going to take over your job? Probably not a lot of jobs. I know I talked to an expert a couple months ago about this, uh, and she said, yeah, a lot of people got laid off in 2025 because of AI. It was the buzzword. CEOs were really pushing it down. If you get rid of these people, use AI. And she said it's a great idea, except that AI can't do these jobs, and a lot of them are going to be quietly hired back. Maybe not those same people, but those jobs need humans in them for now. Maybe 10 or 15 years from now, not. But there's too much critical thinking required. You can't have a large language model do that. So, is AI gonna take over my job? Do I have marketable skills? And that's a big deal. Again, going back to what my dad did, is the skills that those people had were not marketable. They were not. A computer operator. Okay, you sit there, you press a couple of buttons, you load some tapes. That's about it. That's it. I did the computer operator job when I was in college part-time in the summer times. I'd fill in for guys that were on vacation. It wasn't a complicated job. It's not marketable. It was, it paid well at the time because it was mission critical. But once that mission ended, it wasn't that critical anymore. But upgrading on the company's dime on your skills, making yourself more marketable, is a big deal. Geography. Are you in the right place? I was reading something just at the end of last year about Anheuser-Busch was closing their plants. I think it's plants S with an S. I thought it was just one, but somewhere it said three in New Hampshire. If you didn't know, is Budweiser doesn't make all of the beer just in St. Louis, Missouri. They make it all over the country because the trucking costs are too high. But apparently, trucking costs are cheap enough now that they're closing the plant in Merrimack, New Hampshire. 475 employees gone. Not really. Is the articles lament, well, these are 475 people to get it going out of work. The company said, oh no, we need those 475 people. We just don't need them in Merrimack, New Hampshire anymore. We need them in other places in the country. And if you're willing to move, we will pay for you to move, and we will put you in that same job at this other plant. If not, here's your severance, just like everything else. And we still have to hire for that job at that other place because we've got to make up the production in other facilities. So geography may drive you someplace else. Is if you're somewhere that jobs aren't growing or have no prospect to grow, maybe it's time to look elsewhere geographically. And that's important. I mean, Massachusetts in general, I will say from my local area, tends to be a hub for technology jobs. So it's helpful to be here. Other places, not so much. Other places have been dead for a long time and they just can't, there's no way they're coming back. So you need to take a look at that. Is your geography getting in your way? And if so, time to go. Is it time to just change careers completely? Is it time to do something else? Or is it just time to hang up your spurs? Are you close enough to retirement that maybe you can work something part-time? You could be the greeter at Walmart or, work Home Depot in the electrical department or whatever. Is it time to start looking at that? So all of those kind of play in. Does it give you an answer? No, it doesn't. Here's why. This is a very individual decision. This isn't something that you can say, well, everybody should do X or everybody should do Y. You have to look at all of these for you based on who you are, what you know, what you think you can learn to know, and where your job is going in the future. Those will all determine how that works out for you. Next step, get some help. Get some help. Get help individual to you. Career coach, career planner. I gotta say, I'm not a big fan of professional help a lot of times for these things, just because I've had to do it myself. I just did it myself, but my gosh, having somebody who has their finger on the pulse, especially in your geographical area of what's going on and what's happening, this might be the time to talk to them. Getting that education is something you definitely should be looking at. Talking to a professional financial advisor. I'm biased. I'm 100% biased on this, but I will tell you, it makes a difference. I cannot stress it. And I am completely biased, and you don't have to believe me. Talk to somebody else who's gone through it, who's had somebody next to them. As I have retired hundreds of times in my 35 years doing this. Hundreds of times I have retired with my clients. I know where a lot of the pitfalls are. I know what the benefits are. I know things like do this, do that, because it's going to save you $5,000 in your taxes that people don't think about. That's what an advisor does for you. It's absolutely important to get that. You can get some of it, like I said earlier, from Fidelity, but it's garbage in, garbage out. You need to be very careful about that. Or you can hire somebody who is a true fiduciary financial advisor, whatever you want to term them. Again, deal with somebody who has experience in what you're doing. Again, I'm biased. I'm going to tell you I'm biased, but get somebody who knows, who's been down this road before. It's vitally important. Assess your resources. Really look at what's going on. Like I said earlier, looking at what do I have? What do my prospects look like? What are my pitfalls or roadblocks coming up? And the last thing, we even talk about this, but I'm going to throw it in. Now is the time. Man, I would start stuffing cash in an envelope. Put it in a bank account so far away from you can't touch. Because if you do get riffed, if you do get a short offer, you want to have a lot of resources behind you. And this is the time to put money in the bank and have money available. And if it works out that everything's fine, and you weren't using that, you were using that money before, that was your vacation fund, or that was paying down that extra debt or whatever, you can then do that at that point. But for now, playing it safe is important. So that's what I've got for you today. If you have questions, you can jump down in the show notes, reach out to us. You can also email me specifically. If you have specific questions you're worried about, if you're a union member and you're worried about potential an offer in April, or if you're just worried that there's a rift coming, whether there is or not, but you're just afraid of it, and you have questions specific to your situation, I encourage you, you can shoot me a personal email. My email is dennis@successfulmoney.com. It's that simple. We can talk, see if we can help, at the very least, point you in the right direction. But yeah, jump down in the show notes. If you need to just reach out, give us ideas on podcasts, let us know what you thought. If you have questions, you can also reach us there as well. If you get a chance, make sure you rate us, make sure you share the podcast information with a friend, especially a coworker that may be going through the same thing. I'm trying to get this information out to as many people as possible. So with that, stay safe out there.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Remember, the views expressed are not necessarily those of Successful Money Strategies. All content is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as an endorsement of any third party or their views, or as a solicitation or offer to sell securities or provide investment, tax, legal, or consulting services. We believe the information presented to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed for accuracy or completeness. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Hypothetical returns do not reflect actual trading and may not be indicative of the performance of any specific investment. Always consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Additional information, including management fees and expenses, is provided on our Form ADV Part 2, available upon request, or at the SEC's Investment Advisor Public Disclosure website, https://advisorinfo.sec.gov.